Dan and I are going to do here, he's here as well. He's going to be doing your class here in a bit. I'll be the seller, you be the agent.
Perfect.
And let's just kind of run through, actually I'm going to move this back a little bit so we have a little bit of a wider angle. There we go. Let's just kind of talk through how a listing presentation would go, kind of how you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the tips I want to give you, if you guys have something to write down, this has been really helpful for me. Obviously, I think a lot of the trepidation and fear that people have is setting that appointment up. So I want to tell you quickly how I do it and some of the things that have helped me. So I really like this line, and basically it says, if I can't make financial sense to you in 15 minutes or less, I'll leave. Meaning, I'm not going to take your whole day up. I'm going to come to your house. I'm going to show you what I have to show you. I'm going to get to the point. And if it doesn't make sense, I'm out the door. And so that opens more opportunities up for me than does these long, sort of drawn out conversations. Write this down. I want you in and out in under an hour. And when I say that, I mean, I want you in and out of the house in under an hour. I want you to do some rapport building. I want you to get to know them, but I don't want you to spend an exorbitant amount of time, because what I find is when we have these wide windows of time, we tend to oversell, right? So we want to tell them every single thing that we're going to do. And in today's environment, more than ever, we've got to get to the point. So I'm going to shut up and do that right now. We're going to go ahead and walk through this. So in this scenario, Greg is the seller. He has contacted me, or I've contacted him, and he has a desire to sell his home. There's some things I've got to find out before I go out there to pre-qualify him, and I'm going to do that real quick. So Greg, thank you so much for reaching out to me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I understand from your email that you're thinking about selling your home. Let me first ask you, how long have you lived in the area?
So we've been in the house for about 5.5 years now. You know, our circumstances have changed. I'm taking a job across town, so the commute's getting to be a little bit much. So at this point, we're just maybe looking at, you know, I think we might have some equity here. So we're kind of trying to figure out if it makes sense to sell this and move somewhere else to kind of lessen that commute every day.
Perfect. So whether you realize it or not, what I've just done is I've begun to pre-qualify Greg. I've started to ask him some questions that are going to let me know if his house or his home that he has to list are going to be a good fit for me and my business. He's told me some things that give me a reason to believe that it would. I've also identified in this same little short period of time his why. So why does he want to sell? He wants to sell because possibly the commute, getting closer to work, taking the family. I noticed he said we, so watch what I do with this. So Greg, you said we. Tell me who we is. Do you have a family? Are you married?
So I am married and we have a daughter as well.
Very good. If you don't mind, can I ask your wife's name?
Sure, my wife is Heather.
Okay, Heather. So I'm immediately starting to take notes now because I need to put this in my database so that I know when I talk to Greg, right? Because the point of sale might not happen right away. I need to know who Greg has in his family because, as we know, it's very much a personal relationship. So Greg, it's great to meet you. You've told me that your wife is Heather. You told me your daughter's Faith. Okay, now I want to get sorted to, does it make sense for us to do this? Okay, that's fine. I would have gotten that out of him.
Yeah.
But now I need to figure out if it makes sense for us to go ahead and meet. So the next thing I would do is go ahead and set the appointment. Well, it sounds like, Greg, you would be a good candidate for our marketing presentation that we do. If I can tell you in 15 minutes or less how I can put money in your pocket, get you out of the house with no stress or no work, would you be willing to meet?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Great. I have Tuesday available at 2 o'clock. I also have Thursday available at 4:30. Which of those works better for you?
Tuesday would work great for me, but I'm not sure if Heather could be there. Is that okay?
I really want both decision makers present because there's a lot for us to potentially look at, and I think it's important that both of you be present for that. So is there a better time on Tuesday or Thursday that we can do?
So then Thursday afternoon would probably be better for us.
All right, let me look at my calendar and I'll let you know. So I'm going to look at my calendar. Obviously, it's a listing appointment. I'm going to probably make time for that if I don't have another listing appointment, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things I want to caution you against doing, though, is saying this. When can you meet? I'm available. Because that's going to give them the perception that you don't have any other business. Right. You want to give them the perception that you have other appointments, right? So we're going to establish the time is going to be Thursday, and I'm going to go to the home. So there's a few things I need to bring with me. And I'm going to tell you what I bring. And then I'm gonna share with you a little bit of how you can prepare when you go out to the property. So obviously you want to have a good, concise listing presentation. And you can obviously get that from your back office, or you can create your own. We have one available to you that you can use. I do recommend presenting that based upon your audience. So if you're going into Timber Oaks and you may have an audience that's 55 and up, you may want to present that in such a way that's in paper format or in book format. You're going into a home where you have people that are in their early 20s, you're probably going to want to be more digital. The great news is we give you both. We give you a digital presentation and a presentation for you for now. So you're going to bring that with you. You're also going to bring some of your data analysis. If you haven't taken our CMA roundtable class, you probably want to do that next week. Okay. So you're going to want to come prepared with that. That's going to have the physical data to show them what the market suggests their home is worth, right? So you're going to want to come kind of armed with those. And then any marketing material that you want to print up from back office, you want to bring that with you as well. These are all things that you're going to want to have in your possession as you go out to this appointment, right? So we're going to kind of do a walkthrough how that appointment's going to go, and then you guys can kind of ask questions and take notes. So when I arrive at the property, the first thing that I do out front is I actually take a picture of the front of the house. And I do that because I immediately want them to see me working and see me interested in their property. So I'm not somebody who's just coming there to sell them something. I'm somebody who's doing something proactive right from the gate. They're going to ask me, what were you doing out there? Oh, I was creating a short pre-marketing video for your property. I'm already taking some liberty, right, that I'm assuming I'm going to get the listing. I'm a proactive, hardworking agent. As I go into the home, I'm going to establish some rapport. So, hey, Greg, I'm Dan. It's a pleasure to meet you. We talked on the phone. I noticed that Heather is here as well. I appreciate you having her. Obviously, I'm going to introduce myself to Heather. And then I'm going to take about 5 minutes and I'm going to do some more rapport building, right? So I'm going to start asking them things about Ford, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And this is really important because if you jump straight into business, you're going to lose them. Take your environment into consideration. I notice you have crown molding in here. Did you do that yourself, or was the home done that way when you bought it? These are things that you didn't do it. These are things that are going to start to immediately establish rapport. I do want to caution you against making too many complimentary things about the home, because sometimes when you give them the price, ultimately they're going to go back and say, well, Dan, you told me the house was terrific and now you're telling me it's worth less than I thought it was. So be objective, and then as quickly as possible get into a tour of the home. You want to look around, show me your home. What are some of the things, Greg, when you bought this house that you loved about it? And what are some of the things that, tell me about that.
So when we first moved in, the house didn't have an updated kitchen. And that was the one big takedown for us. So the first thing we did was renovate the kitchen. Granite, new appliances, got that the way we wanted it. But we loved that the house had this beautiful water view. We had the nice pool, because for us, outdoor living is so important that, we just fell in love with the patio space. So we could overlook the floors, we could overlook the kitchen, because that's what we had to have.
Very nice. And I can tell that you've definitely done some improvements in that respect. That will actually make the home more sellable. It'll also make it more marketable. When someone comes in to look at the house, that's one of the first places they look, is the kitchen and what's the view like. So so that's really good. Is there anything in the home, any deficiencies that you know of right on the top of your head that would prevent somebody from buying it?
So we know the roof is 15 years old. We haven't had any leaks. We don't have any issues with it. But I know in Florida, 15 years, we're probably getting to the end. Is that going to be a problem for us?
Well, we're going to find out. One of the services that I offer with my listing package is what's called a pre-home inspection. What that's going to do is get you ready for a potential post-home inspection when a buyer comes in and has a home inspection done. So should you choose to list with me, that's an additional benefit that you're going to receive.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So we can talk more a little bit about that if it seems like it makes sense for you to list. The next question is how quickly would you like to move? Let me ask you a question. If I could have an offer on your home and have you moved out of here in less than 3 weeks, would that be okay?
Getting a house back in 3 weeks, have you looked around? That might be a little challenging. Maybe 5 or 6 weeks would be better.
So if we could have it marketed and have you out of here in maybe 6, maybe to 8 weeks, that'd probably be perfect.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, so why I asked him that is I want to create the environment that he believes that I can get this thing sold really quick. So though most people will say, I can't leave in 3 weeks, I want to create that environment with him so that he believes that I can in fact sell it quickly. So I'm not having to tell him that, I'm asking him questions. Right. What are some other questions that you might ask as a seller?
So typically, one of the questions is always going to be, well, what do you charge for commission?
That's a great question. What did you have in mind?
Well, I've talked to a couple of other people and I saw some advertisements that something about 4% or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that kind of what's going on now?
Well, just like anything else in life, Greg, you're always going to get what you pay for. And so one of the things that I share with all of my sellers before we sell, and I've worked with many sellers, is that the percentage of commission that we charge really doesn't have any effect on what you put in your pocket. And I'm going to explain why. If we were to do a cut rate commission and I was to do inferior services for you, for instance, not professional photography, no pre-list inspection, and I was to dial back the amount of marketing that we're going to do to sell your home, I would actually put less money in your pocket. So the question I want to ask you is, would you want to put more or less money in your pocket? That's going to dictate how much commission that we charge to that service.
Obviously, you want more money in your pocket, right?
So if you want the most money in your pocket, I normally charge X%. I can tell that you guys have taken great care of the home, and because of the expediency with which I can sell it, I'm willing to go down to Y%. And the reason I'm willing to do that, Greg, is because it seems like you and Heather are really on the ball and you want to get this house sold. So I'll give a little if you guys give a little. Y% will give you my entire package as well as the pre-list presentation or the pre-list inspection. If that's something that makes sense for you, I can go ahead and work up a net sheet for you right now and tell you exactly what you would earn.
Okay. So you talked about your full services. What does that look like?
Absolutely. So one of the first things I talk about, guys, is the fact that we have a digital online catalog, a magazine that goes out to over 100,000 people per month. And the way we accomplish that is through Facebook groups and some other things, but it goes out nationally and internationally. The second thing that I talk about is the fact that I use professional photography. And this is going to give you a great opportunity to pull some listings that don't have professional photography. And so what I would say is, Greg, here's an example of some of my previous listings or my office's previous listings. You certainly could call me, guys, if you ever wanted to use a template for what it's going to look like if you don't have listings. But then I want you to go in the MLS and look at some ones that were shot with their phone or that are really bad. And I want you to say, this is what X% will get you, and this is what Y% will get you. So we want to be on the top end of that. The other service that I offer is that, unlike most of my competition, I have nearly 300 realtor members in my brokerage firm. That means that day one, as soon as you list, the other realtor members are going to see that and they're going to be immediately exposed to it. Each realtor member, by definition, has about 2 to 4 buyers they're currently working with. So your exposure out of the gate is going to be triple or quadruple what it would be with another agent. So I'm starting to do what we call stacking the pool, right, as Tom Ferry calls it. So we're getting in front of them. And again, we don't want to overload them with information, but we want to let them know what it is that we do differently.
Right. And that's basically when we go through it. I mean, I've done a class where we go through the listing presentation, but a lot of the things that you want to find out when you're doing those probing questions is what matters to them. So how did you find this house? That's another question that I ask frequently. And they go, oh, we came through in an open house. Okay, great. In their mind, open houses sell homes because that's how they bought their home.
Right.
The same way, oh, we saw it on Zillow. Oh, okay, great. So I'd imagine the photography was pretty good then, right? Because if it had garbage photos, you probably wouldn't have come look at it, right? So then to them, they're like, oh yeah, professional photography, that's important. So by asking those questions to know what is it that caused you to purchase this house, whether it's a feature, whether it's a function, whether it's a location, whether it's whatever it is, ask the next question to get you to, well, how did you find it? And then it was like, oh, well, my neighbor actually I met 20 years ago. Oh, so you bought the house because of somebody you already knew in the neighborhood. Maybe I need to go do some door knocking to the people on this street to let them know that I'm about to list this house because maybe they also know somebody who wants to live in the neighborhood. So there's a few other kind of pointed questions that you really want to be specific about to know that, what is it that's important to them? Because if I come in and go professional photography and open houses and they go, no, I don't want people coming to my house that I don't know. I don't want an open house. Okay, great. Well, I've just completely negated one of my sales points and they may go, oh, well, I talked to this other agent who didn't mention doing an open house. Maybe I'd rather go with them. Even though to us, that's something that has value, to the seller, you need to figure out what drives them and what motivates them to make decisions.
That's absolutely true. And as you build that rapport with them, there are some key things you can do, guys, in a short period of time to build that rapport. One of them, as we talked about, is identifying the individuals and their family. The other one is, how long have you lived in the area? What type of work are you in? What are your goals when you sell this house? Where are you thinking about going? I can find with every single individual, every single one of you watching, something that we have in common, and I can do it in a very quick period of time. So you need to develop that skill. Is really more important than the nuts and bolts of the value of the house. As important as all that is, if you can't build that rapport with them, then you're going to have a hard time winning the listing. Consequently, if you build the rapport, they get the trust, you can kind of take them on the journey that you're going to take them on, if that makes sense. So hopefully that was helpful, and I'd like to answer some questions. Greg can answer some questions. If you have any that are coming through, we're happy to answer them.
You can put it in chat, or you can turn your microphone on. The other thing, just kind of piggyback on that while you guys are typing, is I always say there's three things. Somebody has to know you, like you, trust you. And what Dan's talking about is where that liking you and trusting you component comes in. So, you know, obviously they know you because they called you to do a listing appointment, but they have to like you. They have to have some sort of breakfast at Tiffany moment, and then they have to trust you. So Marcy said, are we able to see the recording of this video later? It is recording, so I can certainly edit it and share it back later if you guys would like it. I don't have a problem with that. The personality class that we're doing next is already recorded on YouTube, so I probably won't put that one back up, but yeah, absolutely. I can copy this and stick it out for you guys. Can you talk about the pre-inspection?
Yeah, absolutely. So pre-inspection is a service that I offer, and I have an individual inspector who goes through and does that. It's not terribly expensive, but once I secure the listing, it is something that I invest in to go ahead and do. There's a couple options you have here. You can pay for it yourself as the agent if you offer it, and that will depend upon what you're charging them, obviously, because it's a business proposition. Or you can ask the seller to pay for it. But here's what it's going to do. It's an inspection of the home, okay? That's going to look for potential issues that are going to come up on the buyer's inspection once your seller goes under contract. And it's a really good way for your seller to know where to focus their energy and their dollars on getting the house ready to market and sell. So I did a pre-inspect on a gentleman's house just a couple weeks ago, and what we revealed was that there were a few spots on the roof that needed some attention. These were easy things to fix, but the soffit had been pushed up in such a way that we knew it was going to be called out on a home inspection. And so on the pre-inspect, that was notated. We provide that summary to the seller, and then the seller can go through with you as the agent and make an educated decision on which of those things they want to go ahead and fix ahead of time, so that they're potentially not seeing those. The other thing it does is it gets their home ready for insurability. So when they insured their home some time ago, it may not have had an inspection. They may be with a new carrier. Since they've done that, there could be some of the what we call 4-point items: plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, and roof, that have become compromised. And so this is just going to be a good way for them to know and have confidence. And sellers, all the sellers I work with really like this, because one of the things they're not sure of is, how am I going to get my house ready for a potential buyer, and what if they pick my house apart? So this gives them a little bit of a pre-inspect to what they're going to be expected to do during the buyer's inspection period. So,
yep, exactly.
Yeah. So and it's a great selling point. And I promise you that 99% of your competition isn't offering this. And so if it's something you can bring to the table, either at your expense or at your seller's expense, it's worthwhile. And ballpark probably 150 to 250 to get it done. The guy that I used is somewhere around 200-ish, 250. Well worth it, guys, because again, that one repair that he or she exposes that you get fixed could be the difference between closing and not closing on the home.
Well, and using that roof example, you go in and you make $150 repair, as opposed to the next buyer that comes in and goes, oh, those 3 spots, I need a brand new roof.
Right. That's a great point.
Now that inspector, you've already got a roofing company out. Sorry, I'm kind of standing off camera here. You have the inspector, or you have the roofer come out, you fix those areas, and now all of a sudden when the buyer has their inspection, the roof is fine. It may be older, it may be whatever, but it's already been repaired. And so now that's one less thing that the next inspector is going to kick you out on and go, hey, this roof needs to be replaced. Well, no, we actually had the inspection and we know it's good.
If you guys have something to write with, I'll go ahead and give you the pre-inspector's number right now while we're
Here,
online.
I can just put it in chat too.
Okay,
Go ahead.
it's 352-584-3647.
What's your name?
Walt, and the company is Flow, Hello,
Mhm.
Home Inspections.
I can type here. There you go. Okay, so go for it. What if you have a CMA, but you show up and the inside of the house is different than what you expected? That's a great question. Do you want to take it? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay.
And guys, just so you know, this is going to happen to you quite a bit. Now, this doesn't happen as much as it used to in the old days because we have some things we didn't used to have now, right? We have RPR, Realtor Property Resource, which gives us closed data sales from previous MLSs. If you're not a member of NAR RPR, it's free and your membership is already included with your NAR membership. NARRPR.com will give you access to closed listings, photographs, things like that. The second tool that we have to help prevent this, and then I'm going to answer the question, obviously is your MLS. And what you can gain depending upon when it was closed, you can get a sense for what the inside might look like. But there is some speculation that goes on when you do a CMA. So to your question, you know, I've done a CMA on a property. I assumed that the updates in the home were at least at par or average, and I get there and find out that the home is either significantly worse than I thought it was, or perhaps it's better and I've got to adjust on the fly. What I recommend doing in those cases is when you're looking at your comparables, I recommend having on the side of your notes, having a range of what that neighborhood would yield. And let me give you an example. If I'm in Beacon Woods and I'm selling a 322, and the average 322 in there with, you know, normal minimal upgrades is selling for 185,000. I still want to go look at ones that are selling on the higher end because that's going to be a part of my approach. Even though I'm not necessarily going to use those homes, I want to know my cone, so being low to high. So I already go in there knowing that if their house is completely updated, it's probably going to be worth 5 to 10% more in that neighborhood. If it's not, because I've already looked at other homes that are similar to that to gain that value. I want to also caution you against coming up with fixed numbers for these things. It's very case specific, and I'm going to give you an example of this. In so many cases, I get this call all the time. What is a pool worth? What is a kitchen worth? And yeah, there's some cheat sheets out there that we give you that tell you, you know, pool's worth X and
and in the CMA class, I'll share that with you guys.
And those things are cool, but the thing I want to remind you of is the item in question will add what it will add. And I know that sounds really silly, but if I'm in a neighborhood that has 75% pool homes and the home that didn't have a pool sold for the same thing as all the pool homes, a pool adds virtually nothing. But if I'm in a neighborhood that has 75% pool homes and the home without a pool sold for 15% less, now I know that pool adds 15%. So I've really got to be looking geographically at the neighborhood in question for the CMA to know what those items bring. And there is a little bit of research that goes into this to determine. And I just want you to remember, whenever you're comparing a home, compare apples to apples. Don't reach, look for the homes that are as similar to yours in age, construction, size, upgrades, all of that. So hopefully that answers.
And the only other thing that I'll add to that is typically when I include or when I do my CMA, I do make it a point to grab one or two that I think are probably better, because here's what's going to happen. It's never going to fail that the seller goes, oh, Johnny down the street got $385 for his house, so my house must be worth $400. Okay, cool. What they don't realize is Johnny just spent $100,000 upgrading his house with none of the upgrades that you have. So they come in and go, oh, well, his was smaller. Okay, great. But here's some other things you weren't taking into account. But I want to include those properties. So when you look at those and you have the pictures in there, you can pull it up and go, oh, okay, well, granite kitchen, stainless appliances, granite in the bathrooms, brand new floors, brand new paint. You know, how many of these things does your house have? Well, none. Exactly. And that's why I'm not pricing yours the same way that he priced his. because inevitably everybody knows of that one home in the neighborhood that sold for some stupid price comparatively, and they think that their house is exactly the same. And maybe it is, but that's why I always kind of have a range. I have a few, the majority would be of similar condition. And again, you want to ask those questions up front. Have you done any updates? How old is the AC? How old is the roof? Before you show up to do that listing appointment, because the answer to those questions are going to help you be able to compare apples to apples. Hang on, I think there was one other question up here. Should we mention the pre-inspection in the property description? No, that pre-inspection is only for the benefit of the seller. So you want to have that. Ultimately, you want the buyers to have their own inspection. So, you don't ever want them to go, oh, the seller had an inspection, that's good enough. But what you do want to do is prepare that seller to know what could be found on the inspection, right? You agree?
I completely agree.